Good evening once again. Welcome to the Rising Eagle live stream network. You are here in studio with Kathy Goodman, and I'm here too, Tim Kirk, ready to take you into an extraordinary journey of sight and sound. Good evening, Kathy.
Good evening, Tim. How are you tonight?
Living the dream, living the dream. What have you got for us tonight?
Oh, well, there's been some interesting articles recently coming out about cryptocurrency, and I know that's kind of a fun topic in your mind, so I thought maybe we could talk a little about crypto tonight.
Yeah, let's do it. Crypto is awesome and, like you said, very interesting to me. And I think it's important for veterans because this is the future, and not necessarily just crypto, because that's kind of the fashionable thing that everyone likes to talk about, and that's a good thing. But the bigger part of crypto is blockchain. And blockchain technology is what powers crypto technology. But blockchain technology is much more than crypto, and that's really what's going to change the world for so many other things beyond just finance. So let's get started. What have you found in the news?
Well, that's interesting that you said that because, I know I've read a lot recently too about blockchain and how it's got some following in the healthcare industry, which of course is near and dear to my heart. But blockchain really is what is out there to keep cyber information safe, correct? So healthcare obviously has a huge need for that kind of cybersecurity, and blockchain's a good option for that. Also, other areas where that could be important might be governmental defense, any kind of finance type thing. I don't know, Tim, you got a few others up your sleeve?
Yeah, so when we talk about blockchain, think about it in terms of why is it safer than any other computer technology. Think about an Excel spreadsheet that contains information, and it's all encrypted inside the Excel spreadsheet. But any hacker could get inside that Excel spreadsheet and move that information around. Even though it's encrypted, they could either change it knowing what those encrypted elements contain, or they could hack the encryption and figure out what it says. In blockchain, you take that same Excel spreadsheet and spread it out across 1 million computers, 10 million computers, 100 million computers, so that any hacker would have to simultaneously hack 100 million computers at the same time in order to get at that information. And you encrypt it across that chain, and that chain is what continually updates up and down its system with all the people that participate in that. And that is what adds a great layer of security, in that it's constantly checking itself across many different computers. And that's called distributed ledger. That ledger, that Excel spreadsheet, if you will, hypothetical, is the ledger that's distributed across. And then when you have changes come down to that, that's a block of transactions. And that block comes down and then gets decrypted by the individual participants, those individual computers, that then take those transactions, update their ledgers, and report back to the chain. Hey, these are the changes that we made, and all those changes get confirmed from computer 1 to computer 100 million. That's a very basic way of understanding fundamental blockchain. And so the sky's the limit in terms of how you apply that in order to protect information, and the nature of those transactions on what they represent. In cryptocurrency, those transactions are financial transactions, and how you incentivize participation is you attach monetary values to the processing of those decryption efforts. So the fastest people to get through those transactions get paid a fee for doing that, and that's what mining is called. Whenever you go in and take a really fast computer and de-encrypt all those transactions and report it back, then you are mining. So just a fundamental bit of information there for those of you at home who aren't keeping score. Mining is a participation in a blockchain, and it's really, if you think about it, community. It's a bunch of like-minded people who all want to keep the same information safe, and so they participate and watch each other's backs. It's kind of a neat idea.
Said a couple of interesting things there. One is that this information is replicated across multiple computers, and it's a matter of it's safe because the information is encrypted, but then also because it's the same information across the board, so it's pretty much impossible to hack. The other thing I thought was interesting was how the amount or the value is attributed. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, in the case of cryptocurrency, you're looking at a vice dollar or the won or the yen or the ruble, where modern currencies are called fiat currencies, meaning they get their value based upon a declaration, a fiat, where a central bank says this is how much the dollar is worth. They declare its value by saying this is how much it costs to get one, i.e. the prime interest rate says this is how much it will cost a bank to come in and get some in order to loan it out to people. And if you think about it, when they loan dollars to people, they attach an interest rate on it. That's really a fee. The interest rate is just a fee for accessing that money. So in the case of fiat money, its value is dictated by some central bank. It's not the government. It's not even an elected agency. It's just a private institution that gets to decide. It's a small group of unaccountable, unelected people who say, this is how much it's going to be worth, based upon...
Wait. I thought it was based on gold in Fort Worth.
You mean Fort Knox?
Yeah.
There's actually more gold in Fort Worth than there is in Fort Knox.
Fort Knox. I thought that was like this bunker full of gold that nobody could bust into.
Only in James Bond movies.
Oh.
Yeah, I hate to be the one to tell you there's no gold in Fort Knox. And even if there was, it doesn't have anything to do with the price of a dollar. See, in the old days, dollar bills, the old greenbacks, were in fact certificates. They were certificates that were attached to the value of a certain amount of a commodity backing it up. So when you went to a bank, that bank owed you a certain amount in a precious metal. So a $2 silver note meant you turned it in at the window and they gave you $2 worth of real silver metal. Or in the case of coins, coins were minted in the metal themselves. So you had gold coins and silver coins, and they had a face value to them, but they also had a melt value, which represented, what their actual value was. In a lot of cases, they weren't worth as much in melt value as they were in their face value. But nowadays, they're worth a lot more melt value than face value. So that system went away with the Nixon administration, and we haven't looked back. Now, when you look at your dollar bill, they don't say silver certificate, they don't say gold certificate, they say Federal Reserve note. And that Federal Reserve is no more U.S. government than Federal Express. Okay, Federal Reserve, Federal Express, both private businesses. They don't really have anything to do with the government. Now, you'll see, confirmation of the Federal Reserve chairman and stuff as kind of theater on stage in Washington, but that doesn't make them government. It really just has to do with how the illusion, if you will, of Federal Reserve is conducted in Washington, because the Federal Reserve is simply the federally appointed bank that all the other banks have to go to by law in order to get their money. So, hypothetically, sure, Congress could designate a different central bank in order for all the other banks to get their money, and so there's some semblance of accountability there, but that's not going to happen. There's no federal aspect to it at all. It's not U.S. government, which kind of creates an interesting constitutional situation if one were to actually read the Constitution. But hey, who am I to read the Constitution, right? I mean,
So what you're saying is this bank just determines what the worth of the dollar bill is, so that the economy stays stable in our country.
well, they do that for a variety of reasons. It can be because of a shortage of commodities worldwide. It can be because of political situations. It can be because of wars. And you saw after 9/11, the Fed turned the prime interest rate down to nearly zero and made money basically free. Why was that? Because of the recessionary force that 9/11 put on the economy. And the big concern was that that recessionary force would turn into a depression and people would stop spending their money and you would have basically an economic collapse driven by the events of 9/11. And the political entities at the time said rather than face something that would be perceived as a big terrorist win, a foreign policy failure, let's promote this idea of dropping the interest rate to zero, which makes for free money and everyone can go shopping. And we had a big, um, rebate check everyone got in the mail from the IRS, and everyone went shopping. And then you saw in 2008, we had a big housing bubble blow up. And a lot of that housing bubble was due to a lot of factors, including bad regulation in Fannie and Freddie Mac and a lot of bad ideas in derivative markets and so forth. But it really stemmed from what happens when the money supply is wide open. When the Fed dropped the interest rates to zero and money was fast and loose, then people looked for ways to spend that money and they started flipping houses, and that turned into we need to offer mortgages to people who can't afford mortgages, and that in the housing bubble.
That's so interesting to think about it that way, that really 9/11 was kind of the root cause of what
yeah,
led to the housing bubble.
yeah, a lot of things. And when you go back to the 70s, you saw the other way. You saw interest rates really high. And the way to think about interest rates is interest rates are a way of either absorbing money from the economy or pushing money out into the economy. It's kind of like the money supply sponge. So when interest rates are high, it's absorbing money from the economy, and people have to spend more in order to use money. And that brings the money supply down, and that has a deflationary effect because with less money to spend, there's less demand. That drives prices down, deflationary effect. When people have more money to spend, demand goes up, prices go up, and you have an inflationary effect. The calculus around a lot of the post 9/11 effect was that rather have the effect of prices going up than facing the recessionary slash depression that they were worried about with respect to the effect of losing everything that we lost in 9/11. So that gives you an idea of how the central bank fiat approach is designed to use boom and bust cycles with the money supply in order to be responsive to global events.
Sure. So the central bank manipulates A, the cost of the dollar and the worth of the dollar, value of the dollar, and B, also the interest rates, which then impact supply and demand to make our economy supposedly stable.
The problem is that has unintended consequences. So if grandma has been working hard her whole life, saving away dollars and putting them in the bank and holding on to them, and then this inflation variable called the interest rate goes to zero, and the money supply goes high, and the Fed basically prints money in order to keep the money supply up, because that's ultimately what's necessary, because the money supply has to keep up with that demand. Then the value of what grandma has in the bank begins to decline. And the longer that that stays in effect, then the lower and lower grandma's savings account is worth. So grandma saved $1,000 in an account, and in 1990 that was worth $1,000, but in 2010 that's worth $400. See, you have this effect on the value of each dollar, and that's why when you look at things like the minimum wage, it's funny when you compare across time the value of that dollar. People say $15 an hour minimum wage. Well, if you go back and look at the minimum wage from 1964, it was actually worth way more than $15 an hour in real terms, just from the melt value of those coins. The metal in those coins was worth more than $15 today because of that same inflationary effect on the currency.
Wow, that's crazy to think about.
Yeah, so it has unintended consequences whenever you manipulate the currency that way.
Well, I think that's what's kind of cool about cryptocurrency then. Because when you start talking crypto, all of a sudden there's all these different coins, and the value is not set by a bank, but it's actually set by what? The value of the effort in order to obtain those coins, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Each market or each coin has a market for that coin, and the value of the coin cannot be determined or manipulated by any one person. In fact, the new chief of staff for the White House just had an article, I think, in your deck there talking about how it's impossible to manipulate the price on the basis of fiat. It is possible to affect the price on the basis of supply and demand, in terms of if you own a lot of it and you sell it for cheap, that affects the price. But ultimately, the price of Bitcoin, for example, is based upon how much it costs to acquire a Bitcoin. So if everybody wants Bitcoin, then in order to acquire a Bitcoin, you have to buy the machinery, you have to have the electricity, you have to have the heating, or the basically either heat abatement or cooling capacity in order to run the machine. And that cost is precisely what is distilled down into the value of that coin. And you can't fake it. There's no way to artificially inflate or deflate that value. It's still subject to market forces. So if someone who owns a lot of it decides they want to sell it, that's an entirely different proposition. But in terms of one central bank being able to manipulate it for their own purposes, yeah, cryptocurrency is entirely immune to that, and that's the big draw, is there's no third party involved. It's all the members of that community who, ostensibly share the same interest in protecting that system, that ecosystem, if you will.
So I really like that too. That's interesting because it kind of draws into what we're doing here at the community center, and that's building based off of community. And so I think that's cool about cryptocurrency. One of the articles that I did pick out for today to talk about was talking specifically about Bitcoin. It's been kind of a rough year, I understand, for cryptocurrency in general, but Bitcoin, especially in this article, was talking. Well, let me start. There's an article published by Bitcoin Price News on December 15th, so just a couple of days ago, and it's talking about downturn or not, Bitcoin has still outperformed Apple since last January. And I thought that was pretty interesting because Apple still seems to be selling all kinds of iPhones when you look at what's going on in the market there.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the press loves to poo-poo cryptocurrency, and they love to talk about the death knell associated with Bitcoin. And it's funny because I'm old enough to remember when everyone liked to poo-poo Apple. I was around during the death watch days of the late 90s before Steve Jobs came back to Apple. And everyone was talking about, Apple's on death watch. And will they make it past 1 January 1997? Will they make it past July 97? And the real concept behind Apple's products was something that was getting blown away at the time, but ultimately, once Steve came back and reinvigorated uh, the system by simplifying their product line into four basic lines of products, and then transmogrified that into iPod and iPhone and the iTunes Store, and unlocked the power of his ideas there. It completely transformed not only Apple, but really the world through um, fighting off the Napsters of the world and creating a licit environment for music, movie downloads inside a closed system. And of course, today we just kind of think of it as normal. You've got Netflix, you've got iTunes, Google, Amazon. Well, none of that would exist if it hadn't been for Steve Jobs talking to the movie execs and the record industry leaders and convincing them, instead of fighting Napster and the trend of digitization, to go along with that trend and make it work. Well, that stemmed from, the death watch. Apple is done, it's dead, it's going to die, at any time now. And even when Steve came back, people talked about the dead cat bounce, that this is not Apple's resurgence, this is just the dead cat bounce of Apple. Don't worry, it's dead, just give it time. Well, now, Apple's the belle of the ball, the trillion-dollar company. They've got the big spaceship building in California that everyone, I guess, is running into glass walls and hurting themselves. But anyway, they've arrived and they're the thing, and I get it. But it's funny that those two lines cross now. That Bitcoin is demonstrably a better performer investment-wise than Apple. But it really is a better comparison than that. Yes, mathematically, Bitcoin has outperformed both Apple and Google in terms of investment performance over the past year, 2 years, 5 years. But it's also the same sort of thing. Apple and Google have both been at the vanguard of really disruptive technologies that have completely changed the way we live our lives and we organize our day. And now it's just something that's natural to us. We hardly even think about. You have a GPS in your pocket. Go figure. Well, 15 years ago, you didn't have a GPS in your pocket. Same thing with crypto. With crypto, in the future, you're going to have a bank in your pocket, and you're not going to think about it. And it's going to be totally natural. And with blockchain, you're going to have a blockchain community or a series of blockchain communities in your pocket or on your watch or in your glasses. And it's going to completely transform so many different areas, from your HOA in where you live or your apartment complex or your rental home, down to your medical records and how you pick your doctor, to your grocery shopping. Everything is going to be touched by blockchain. And cryptocurrency is going to be the leading edge of that transformation, where you're able to do stuff. For example, the state of Ohio just announced, hey, if you want to pay your taxes, your state taxes in Ohio with cryptocurrency, we're open for business. There's a website, you can check it out. Just Google Ohio taxes, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, whatever. You can now pay your state taxes in Ohio with Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash. There's several that you can use.
Who'd have thought? That's absolutely amazing.
Right.
I mean, I remember not so many years ago getting your paycheck, having to take your physical paycheck to the bank, cash it, take your cash, and that's what you had in your pocket to spend when you went out to the restaurants or wherever. And now it's all, you can pay with things on your phone. You can deposit checks on your phone. And now I'm just sounding like an old fogue to all the young ones today, I guess, but it's amazing how fast the technology is changing right now and where it's taking us. And the fact that you can pay taxes, state taxes in Ohio with Bitcoin, that is a clear signal that cryptocurrency is coming and it's going to change the world.
And if you're a veteran thinking about what to do after service or as your next career, or if you're an entrepreneur thinking about, how can I break out into the next big thing, I want you to think about blockchain. There are conferences being held every month around the country. I just attended one in Texas. They just had a big one this month, last week in Los Angeles, all about blockchain. Professional conferences, if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there is a blockchain professional group that is on Facebook, and they're constantly talking about emerging technologies and how those technologies are being put together. There are exciting opportunities to both learn and leverage for entrepreneurial efforts in all kinds of different fields. So I really put the call out to veterans everywhere. If you're looking for something new and exciting that's going to change the world in one way, shape, or form, blockchain's where it's at. Like you said, Kathy, it's already changing so many things, underneath the surface, and the rate of change is going to go exponential once this becomes a commercially available solution set where you can just go to Amazon and get the blockchain server 101 and download the software off of Google's blockchain app store or whatever and plug that in. Or maybe someone within the sound of my voice will be the one to design that app store or that blockchain server or whatever else. There's huge opportunities, and right now it is a wide open field to take advantage of. Go for it.
Awesome.
I'm calling you out. I'm looking at you right there, and you.
It's definitely coming. And I would say thanks for listening to us tonight. If you guys want to hear more about this is definitely kind of a favorite topic out here too. So we'll definitely be bringing some more updates and chats about this topic, and hope to get some engagement with you. So.
And one more thing. I read Warren Buffett's book, and I think it's so funny. When you hear Warren Buffett talk about cryptocurrency and blockchain, he says, "I'm scared to death of it. It scares me." And I think that's like a dog whistle to see who's read his book, because in his book he talks about when people say they're scared of something, here's what you do. Get in there and read about it, learn as much as you can, and embrace it, because if they're scared of it, that means it's changing things and it's important and it's the future. And when he says he's scared of it, that says to me, okay, either he's senile and he forgot what he wrote in his book, or he's sending me a signal. So pay attention and don't listen to me, listen to Warren Buffett. He's scared of it. That means get in there and learn it. Don't be scared of this. It's not scary stuff. It's not rocket surgery. It's really, really accessible stuff. It's not that hard. And if you've been in the military, your exposure to technology, to network centricity, to all the things that we in the military have just, especially if you're a post 9/11 veteran, you have been there, done that. You've learned enough to understand the fundamentals of this stuff. Get in there. There's courses on Coursera, the Khan Academy, all there on your phone that you can take for free. On Coursera, there's a blockchain course from Yale University that you can take for free. Learn this stuff. It is not hard. You can do it. Learn it. There's huge opportunities there. Saying, a mind, terrible thing. Think about it.
Thanks, Tim, for sharing all that with us. This has been an interesting hour and, well, half hour. And I'm sure, like I said, we'll come back with more.
Cool. Thank you, Kathy. And with that, we will say Merry Christmas.
That's right. That's right. It's the 20th already. Can't even believe it. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, all.
Happy New Year, everybody.
All right.
I think. See you next time.
Did you